Recording video while multitasking. I don't know what that's doing, but it was trying to record something. Well, hello, FCF Church. Welcome to Q&A. She's back. We'll actually get some work done.
We will.
We will. Productive stuff.
Keep you two in line.
We
on topic.
Yes.
I will not speak for Pastor Randy.
Did you listen the past 2 weeks?
I listened to the beginning, and then I was busy.
Then you fell asleep?
Yeah.
Be honest. Thanks for joining us for Q&A in the Q&A cave with Pastor Randy, the incredible Pastor Kim, and PG. We are excited to have you with us. We got some questions. You can feel free to like and share the stream. Let us know where you're watching from. And I'm going to go ahead and pull the stream up so we can see your many penetrating questions.
Actually, I have a question to kind of preempt things.
All right.
So what did it cost to get you out of jail?
Yeah.
Las Vegas?
Well,
exactly.
Aunt Wanda covered my bail, so it didn't cost the church anything.
Okay. All right. Good.
Now, be honest. Tell the truth. Has there ever been a point when I had to bail you out of jail?
I thought we were never going to speak of that.
All right, we're up. Can you hear us okay? How's it sound? Where are you watching from? I got somebody else there messaging me. Here we go. They're on. Hey! You got somebody else there. That's not what I sound like.
That's interesting. We went back in time.
I don't even sound anything like that.
Travel.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we ready? You gonna dive in, Pastor Kim?
Oh,
I had to read the last times. It was the worst. Yeah, you getting calls. Sorry, everybody. Whew. It's that one.
There we go.
Good
Much
gracious.
better.
It's like on the surface
Did
of the
you
sun.
like me to go in order? I didn't get to.
Doesn't matter.
We just came out of a
Shake,
very important
shuffle,
meeting.
pick at random. Doesn't
Well,
matter.
I'm going to jump to
There's
this
not
one.
that many questions.
Because
so.
this one intrigues
Okay.
me.
All right.
And I don't know if this was related to Sunday's message or the message before, or maybe it wasn't. But I was thinking it was connected to something you said in a message. Okay. How do you break a soul tie? I think it is. It's Sunday's message on relations. Yeah. So how do you break a soul tie? Maybe what is a soul tie to begin with?
Yeah, I guess the person might be referring to one of the illustrations I used. That typically in our society, a lot of relationships become bonded through physical attraction and then affection.
Yeah.
So
that's true.
Physical thing. And then.
But did you say soul tie?
No, I never used it.
Okay, I didn't think so. Okay.
No, I am a soul man. Have been a soul man since I was a teenager. Used to go to Howard Theater when no one else there to do so. But anyway, I didn't use the term soul tie, but I certainly used the term bonding. And, this is not answerable as one answer because, it depends on, well, what is the nature of the bond? For example, is the bond with let's say, an adult child?
Yeah.
But an adult child who is conducting themselves in destructive ways, and so you're caught in that place where you want to let the child know you still love them, but you don't want to affirm their destructive patterns. Is the bond with a romantic bond, that you haven't married yet, and that has gone in a downward spiral? Is it a bond with a work associate or a partner in business? You know what I mean? A spouse. So it's very hard to answer other than this. The goal would be this. It wouldn't be appropriate to end every bond. Let's say it's a husband and wife. It wouldn't be appropriate to divorce the person, because you find that they are now not a follower of Christ. Let's use that example because I use the unequal yoke. They're not a follower of Christ. In fact, Paul wrote to tell the Corinthians, don't divorce your non-Christian spouses. So that would not be appropriate, but it would be appropriate to make an adjustment to create boundaries. Well, what do I mean by boundaries? I don't mean that you're now punishing the person, but you're putting appropriate boundaries so that you're making sure that they are no longer having this downward disproportionate pull on your life. And so you're figuring out, what do I need to do to stop that from happening? And that's not easy. Now, in many cases, it will require that the bond be broken entirely, which means you have a conversation with the person. If the relationship is close enough, you try to explain your reasoning. And then at that point, you if you're really exceedingly vulnerable to it, you have to break all communication. If you don't break all communication, more than likely you're going to be pulled back in Now that's, again, not applicable in every case. In some cases it would be appropriate to have ongoing conversation because you're trying to adjust. So the goal would be to get your God-given objectivity back. By that I mean that you are going to do the will of God, you're going to stay faithful to Christ. The emotional pull of the relationship is not going to be disproportionate on you. You're going to find a way to get equilibrium once again, and if possible, to preserve some measure of the relationship. The relationship could be preserved but changed. It's not going to have the nature that it had before, and even that would be open for an adjustment should the person change later on, because that certainly can happen. Paul, even in 1 Corinthians 7, when he's answering the Corinthians about being married to non-believers, he says, hey, who knows, you might save your husband or save your wife. You might lead them to Christ, which would mean a complete change in the nature of the relationship. So hard to answer that one without knowing what relationship the person is talking about, what the nature of it is. It's going to look a little different in every case.
In every instance.
Yeah. And I'll say, when you do send in questions, anytime you can give us a little bit more background,
more
where
context.
Your question, context for your question, that helps a lot. Because, like you say, that's a very, like, I wonder what the person is specifically thinking about in their life. So, so are you talking exceptionally low, or is it because my ears are so clogged up?
I think it's your ears.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I'm just talking pretty much.
Are you really? It's so funny because it's on the plane especially. I've had like a head cold, and then the plane, they just
pop.
Boom. Well, they weren't popping, and then I was doing this number to make them pop, which I think you're not supposed to. I think that's dangerous.
Swallow.
Don't
Do
do
that and swallow.
Yeah.
Depressurization is best done if you hold your
nose and then swallow.
swallow
Wait, okay,
multiple
wait a second.
times.
And I wasn't going to say anything, but since you brought it up, I did notice you're shouting at me. I was going to say, why are you shouting at me?
Stop shouting at me!
Why are you yelling at me? Stop
I know why. You can't hear.
I can't hear. Exactly.
Oh, Pastor Kim, we missed you so much. Let us know if you missed Pastor Kim. I did.
Yes.
So 2 weeks is long. I don't like. I shouldn't say that. If Aunt Wanda's watching, she'll be like, no, because I need 2 weeks to go visit Aunt Wanda. But it's a long time to be gone from work and from my dog.
Oh,
Leafy.
Miss my little.
You get her out of the dumpster? She abandoned that dog.
I'm trying to forget it. Yeah, I'm trying to forget it.
Yeah.
I just know that was a side of her that was irregular.
Okay. Next question. Can you further give insight on Ezekiel 40 and on? Is this future prophecy that hasn't been fulfilled regarding the rebuilding of the temple?
It is.
Oh, here we go.
It is. From chapter 40 to the end of the book of Ezekiel, it's all about the rebuilding of the millennial temple. Millennium meaning when Christ has come back, he has set up his kingdom on earth for 1,000 years. That's what millennium means. You can read about that in Revelation chapter 20. And it is during that time that he will build the temple, or he will see to it that the temple is rebuilt. Now, the interesting part about that is there will be a temple,
right?
But that's what we would call the tribulation temple, and it's not legit. It's functional. The Antichristos will stand in it and claim to be God. But the real temple will be built by the Messiah. This is why the Jews in Israel are somewhat confused. Some Jews believe that the Messiah has to return and rebuild the temple. Well, they're actually correct. Mm-hmm. Others believe, no. We have to build the temple so that the Messiah will
return. Right.
Okay.
They're the guys we're cheering for because that temple does need to be built, even though it's not going to be legit. Mm-hmm. But then Jesus, when he returns, will rebuild the temple.
So
that's what Ezekiel 40 is all about.
Will that tribulation temple be destroyed or just
I suspect it will.
Probably
yes, that the location won't even be the same place for the millennial temple and that sort of thing. So, and frankly, there's going to be so much warfare centering in Israel toward the end of the tribulation, as well as atmospheric phenomenon that it's likely it'll be in shambles at least.
I like it.
I was going to say, what's that look on your face? What do you think?
I was thinking when you said atmospheric shambles, I was thinking of your message on Sunday and end times and some
the
other
coming
stuff.
one.
The coming one.
Coming.
Yeah.
The one.
Don't give too much away, man.
Yeah.
See,
you gotta tell them in a couple seconds. You gotta tell them on Sunday too,
I
right?
can't tip my hat too much to you.
It's just a potentially. Can I give them anything?
Give them a little something.
It's a potentially controversial theory that is gonna derail some people, potentially.
Yeah, hopefully not, but it'll be an interesting ride.
And the way you're setting it up is actually gonna be pretty cool. That'll be engaged. Yeah. Okay.
No magician gives away their tricks. That's why they all hate the masked magician.
Yeah, I love that guy. I was like, that's how they did that. All right.
And then you're like, eh.
Yeah.
I know. It's like, wow.
That's all?
That, which is amazing, though.
The balls are in the top of the cup.
Yeah. Okay, next question. If I'm unsure of my family or friends... No, I'm going to cough. I think you're all going to...
Okay.
If I'm unsure of my family or friends' beliefs, or unsure if they're true believers or followers of Christ, how can I ask them or have a conversation with them? What's the best way to kind of bridge that? I don't want to offend them. I don't want to judge them, but feel called to bring them closer to God.
One thing you could do, and again, I don't know if this is going to be appropriate. You have to figure out your circumstances and nature of relationship with family members. But you might say something like, I love you guys, and we've had so many good years and good experience together, but there's a subject that's been on my mind, and I've never really felt comfortable asking you, and I hope I'm not going to make you uncomfortable, but could you tell me, where you're at spiritually, and then go a step further, saying, what I mean by that is what do you believe about God, and why do you believe that? What do you believe about God, and why do you believe it?
Yeah.
And then you sit and you let them answer you. Okay, you have to listen very carefully, and then you say at the end of that, you might say, well, I never knew that's where you're at. Would you mind if I shared with you what I believe about God and why I believe it? So now, without having a controversy or a conflict, you've patiently respected their views on spirituality, but now you get to share your views, and it's the why that is the key.
Yeah.
So then
Why do
you share with them, that your trust is in God as He's revealed Himself in Christ, and you could explain to them the veracity of the Scripture and why it's trustworthy and blah blah blah. There's a lot of ways you can go, but at least the conversational door is open. Now, what you can't do is be so eager for their salvation that you're pushy. Wherever they're at spiritually, you have to respect that, and you can't take somebody that's 10,000 miles away from Christ and try to get them all the way to Christ in one conversation. Now it can happen. It usually doesn't. Usually there'll need to be follow-up conversations, so you've heard what their views of God, and their views of God, it might be, something that's kind of a mixture of common sense, things they've heard in society, fragments of religions, around the world, so you hear that, and then you've got to figure out, well, how can I go about showing them why that isn't a good set of beliefs, without offending them, without making them
That's the challenge.
feel like I'm talking down to them or something. So that would be one way you could do that.
This sounds like the people they're speaking to are Christ followers. Do you think? Because it doesn't say, it says bring them closer to Christ, not bring them to Christ.
Read the earlier part, though.
If I'm unsure of my family and friends' level of belief, or unsure if they are true believers or followers of Christ.
So we don't know if they're true believers or followers of Christ. So that's why I urged, find out, ask them, say, what are your views or beliefs on God, and why?
Why do you believe it?
It's the what and the why. That's the critical. Because now you get a clear assessment of where they actually are. And you'll know how to respond to try to move them toward Christ. And it may take many conversations, not one.
Well, it's interesting, and you alluded to it at the beginning. You actually said it. Anytime there's I'm going to say a controversial conversation, or even a conversation where you're trying to address something, or you feel like there could be tension in a conversation. One of my mentors always says, he says, lead with questions. lots of questions, because even in this instance, like, you're not sure where the person is, and depending on how you ask, or if you just come, if you don't ask a question, you assume you could insult them, which is where you get to that point. So the more questions you can ask, the more a phrase that he uses a lot is, "Tell me more about that. Can you talk a little bit more about that?" But what happens is, in almost every relational situation, we are moving based on some form of assumption about the person. That's where it's dangerous. That's why questions help a lot. So, and that's what you said. You start with ask this, ask this, ask this.
Yeah, and you've opened a safe feeling dialogue.
Yeah.
They're going to tell you what they believe and why. You ask permission to tell them what you believe and why, and now there's a conversation. It's open. It hasn't been, some sort of a intense emotional struggle, which is what it turns into, sometimes when you go too fast into the topic. Because again, the person might be 10,000 miles away from even foundational beliefs, and you can't expect them in one conversation to move all the way to becoming a Christ follower. So you got to get an understanding, and then you try to, continue the conversation in a constructive way that's going to move them closer toward the truth in Christ, and if possible, bring them to the place of putting trust in Him and following Him. So,
which is also, all three of us, is also our style of communication. As we ask tons and tons of questions. Oftentimes my points and your points will be questions where you're, why do we ... How have you chosen the voices and choices? How have you chosen the people that are close to you? And it gets people thinking, and you're able to kind of mine their heart, mine their information, and figure out what they're thinking.
Yeah, because unless you can get somebody to engage authentically with you, we're wasting our time. If we do something, say something that they erect barriers, now they're protecting themselves, well, the conversation is gone.
Yeah, they're shut down. You back? Got a cough drop?
It's not COVID.
Would you like me to read the next question?
Yes.
All right. Baal seems to be the most mentioned false god in the Old Testament. I'm curious of its origin, if known, and when people stopped worshiping this false god.
Yeah, it's a little difficult to get the origin, but it seems like it was the Akkadian culture, which is part of the Sumerian, Mesopotamian, Babylon area, back around 23, 25 BC was where we first get fragmentary references to Baal, who at that point was a kind of a minor deity. Enlil was the big deity, and then Baal starts becoming prominent right around the time of the Israelites' exodus from Egypt. So let's say 14, 40, 50 BC. Now he's the big dog. Now he's the one that the Canaanite cultures are worshiping overtly. His mother Asherah is also prominent, and his demise comes, frankly, when the Israelites are thrown into Babylon for 70 years for worshiping Baal as well as a lot of other gods. When they came out of the Babylonian captivity, they get back, Cyrus sets them free somewhere around 539 BC, and they go back. They're allowed to go back to their land after 70 years captivity. That's it, man. Israel's done with worshiping idols.
Yeah.
It's over. They still were far from perfect, but they did not worship idols. They had learned their lesson. I mean, the 10 northern tribes, they were dragged off by the Assyrians in 721, 722 BC. They never came back. The southern tribes, they go into Babylon for 70 years, and they finally learned their lesson, about worshiping idols. So that's kind of the demise of Baal. Baal kind of fades out of the picture around 539 BC. Now, it doesn't mean that the Canaanite cultures in the vicinity probably still didn't have him to some degree, but by the time you get to the first century, Jesus, on the scene of the Roman Empire, Baal is like not a player. The names have morphed into other more Roman Greek names. This is one of the things, when you trace the gods in the Bible, the gods, from Egypt to Assyria to Babylon, all through these cultures, they tend to continue their existence, but they take on new names. And so, but Baal, Baal's always depicted as this bull's head on a male body. And again, like I say, his mother, Asherah, Baal, the other name for him was Hadad. He's the storm god. He was associated with a lot of control over the weather, which is why the Canaanite culture really worshipped him, because he brought the rain, made the crops grow. Asherah became big too because she was the goddess of fertility. She's often depicted with, I'm trying to be crude here, but she's often depicted with multi-breastises. She has more than the normal amount of breastises.
This is a family show, boss. This is a family show.
Some of you that are old fans of In Living Color, you can appreciate
No.
But anyway, and so part of the worship, and I'm not trying to be crude again, was a lot of sympathetic magic is what they called it. In other words, they would have these orgies. It's just true.
Right. Inappropriate sex.
And all these temple prostitutes, because they thought that when they did sexual acts, it would cause Asherah to fertilize their cattle, their fields, and this is what they believed. Sympathetic magic. And so, of course, this was horrific for the Israelites. I mean, here they are. They're supposed to be the people that represent the one true God, and they get dabbling in Baalism. And the thing about Israel is it was not okay. When you look at the split of the kingdom, so you got Saul, David, Solomon, and the kingdom splits. Northern kingdom, southern kingdom. Well, the northern kingdom has 19 kings before they are taken into Assyrian captivity. Never, ever do they worship God in the appropriate ways. They build a counter temple, and it's just a disaster. However, we would be wrong in thinking that those 10 northern tribes would not have considered themselves as worshipers of Yahweh.
Right. Yeah.
They did still, but they worshiped all these other gods too, because they started believing that, well, Yahweh might be the God that controls this, but we need these other gods that control A, B, C, D, E. And so
polytheism, almost.
Polytheism and syncretism, which is very prominent today. Syncretism meaning that I'm going to take a little bit of Christianity, a little bit of Buddhism, maybe a little bit of Hinduism.
A little bit of myself.
Yeah, a little bit of myself.
A lot of myself.
My desires, make God in my image, we become modern idolaters. So anyhow, the big showdown, of course, is with Elijah and Jezebel and the prophets of Baal. This is somewhere around 850 BC, and of course, the Lord answers with fire and confirms that Elijah and Elijah's God is the God. But that didn't end Baal worship. It still stayed on well after 850, like I say, all the way down to the Babylonian captivity, which happened in 586 BC. They were still plagued by this syncretism. They would dabble around. One of Jeremiah's condemnations was that the Israelites would worship the Lord, meaning Yahweh, Jehovah, but then they would go to their homes, and their homes were littered with all these other idols. So they worshiped the Lord, but they never forsook these other deities. It was kind of like, I'm going to cover all my bases.
Yeah, exactly. What do you get to lose in their mind?
Exactly. One other thing about Baal insisted on blood sacrifice and often child sacrifices. So this was another really dark part. Now the blood sacrifice thing is interesting, because under Baalism, the thought is that God, Hadad, the storm god, Baal, had to be appeased by blood sacrifices. If you want the benefits, if you want Baal to bless you, he has to first be appeased, because he's angry at you for whatever offenses you may have. So he has to be appeased, and he can only be appeased by blood. Well, this sounds a lot like Yahweh. It sounds a lot like the Bible God, if you have that particular view of the atonement. That the purpose of the atonement is to appease an angry God who can only be appeased by a blood sacrifice. But what if the blood sacrifice meant something entirely different? What if it meant, in order for evil to ultimately and completely be destroyed, it meant that the real God, the Almighty God, had to show himself sacrificially devoted to those that he created, even to the point of death on a cross, which is the meaning of all the Old Testament sacrifices and the New Testament sacrifice. Yeah. Not that the Father had to vent his anger on the Son because he was so ticked at our sin, but quite the contrary. The problem was Satan had so slandered the character of God that we no longer trusted God, and to win back our trust, he had to show that he was not just almighty, but he was all sacrificially love-driven.
Safe.
He's the safest person in the universe, yeah. That restores trust in those that can be restored, and then we say goodbye to sin. We realize that sin has not been our friend. It's not the spice of life. It's the kiss of death,
It's killing us.
So anyway, long answer to Baal.
It was deep. It was intense.
Yeah.
I think you should give us a little bit of your message on Sunday.
Well, the message is about educational dangers to steadfastness. Now, what I'm going to look prominently at it is that the educational dangers to our remaining steadfast to Christ, they ironically, some of them come from within the church world.
Yeah. There's two pieces, right?
Two pieces, yeah. And the second piece, though, is then there are, dangers, educational dangers to our steadfastness that come at us from society in general, but particularly in certain segments of history. There have been certain times, for example, where the world sort of turned upside down, as, for example, the day of the flood, the times of the flood, which says that every imagination of man's mind was only evil continuously and violence covered the earth, Well, we are headed for a cycle that the Scripture tells us we must understand, we must be clear about, we must be prepared for, and it's going to be a time where the educational component, and I like to say it like the truth about God and the truth about life, that's going to be attacked in a way that it has never been attacked in all of human history, and I am convinced we are that generation, and we have got to be prepared for what's coming, because it's going to literally just knock our socks off what's down the road, in my opinion. So that's what the second part of the message will be about. And the reason Jesus talks about in Matthew 24, just prior to his coming, that the deception, he says, is going to be so intense, the educational deception, spiritual deception, so intense that it almost even deceives those that are his authentic followers. In other words, they're going to be kind of shaking their head. What do we believe?
What's going on here?
What is this? That it's going to be that compelling. So
where's that reference?
Matthew 24:24, and it's about the sudden appearance of multiple false Christs, and false prophets
that perform miracles.
Yes, all the language is just the same as the miracles of Jesus. So
the actual word that's used for miracles is the same word that's used when Jesus.
Yeah, miracles, signs, wonders, all that same language. So a time when entities will appear on our planet that do the same kind of miracles as Jesus, and they have a doctrine, they have a teaching that is one that the civilization of human history has never heard before. Well, let me rephrase that. It's kind of been seeded in for a long time, but it's never been presented in the way that it's going to be presented in our generation. And I don't believe most Christians are anywhere near prepared for it. The ideas about the last great deception are so foggy at best and so counted as insignificant at worst that we Christians need a wake-up call about deception. Now, thank God there is an awakening taking place, but it's not wide enough. It's not fast enough, in my opinion. So anyway, that's what I'm going to cover.
Because most aren't really thinking through what's going to happen in the end times and some of the stuff Scripture says, what that's going to look like.
No, and Jesus in Matthew 24, one of the things he even says is that when he returns, will the Son of Man, actually it might be in the Markan version, but will the Son of Man even find faith existent on the earth? Something's going to happen that's so devastating that it almost
convinces everybody.
Yes.
Everybody's convinced.
Exactly.
Which, if you think about it, that's something pretty spectacular has to take place.
Absolutely, and it has to be more than compelling. It has to be almost overwhelming evidence of its authenticity, which in one way it will be true. So anyway, I don't want to give too much of it away. That's.
Did we have any questions come in?
We did not.
No.
No, we were.
Wow. They're bored with us today.
Wow. Usually they're firing off stuff.
Well, Pastor Kim's gotten 3 calls as we were starting. That kind of hurt viewership when the stream goes down for a little while. Then she left us twice.
Oh.
And she's the good-looking one. I mean, you and I.
Yeah, I know.
That college.
You don't have to
you
remind
do.
me, man.
I mean, I don't feel like I should ask you this.
Yeah, man, ask me. I do college of power.
Yeah. That's this thing that I'm supposed to be doing.
College and
Damn,
powder.
Kelly will convince you.
It's really, really good for your body in a lot of ways.
inflammation and stuff, right?
Yes.
But also your skin. I mean,
Skin, too.
you looked at older pictures of yourself and said that your skin looks better now than it did 15 years ago.
It's really
20
weird.
years ago.
It's really weird. Old pictures from our first year at South Frederick. I literally, I'm not exaggerating, I have more wrinkles around my eyes when I was like 41
Wow.
than what I do now. Now, don't get me wrong, I got some wrinkles. I got my share, man. I've earned those wrinkles. Bags under my eyes. My bags are always packed and ready to go.
I have to remember that one because I can certainly use it. My bags are packed and ready to go.
See, men have this one distinctive advantage. We can grow beards.
And cover.
And beards
And let's be
cover
honest.
a
Cover a lot
multitude
of-
of sins,
yeah.
a multitude of wrinkles.
The more of my face you cover, the better. Let's just go with
This
that.
is my theory, too.
I mean, a beard almost always improves things.
Let me just say this. You've heard me say it before. A young man looks a little bit older with a beard. An old man looks a little bit younger with a beard. But all men look better with a beard. I have one exception. I have one exception to that. I saw a picture on TV last night of Jimmy, the Saturday Night Live guy. He's got the nice
Fallon.
Jimmy Fallon, and he has a beard. He looks awful. And then they showed a picture of him without the beard. He looks better.
Yeah.
He's the only man alive on the planet. 8 billion of us. He's the only man that looks better without a beard.
No, they're definitely. I think most men do, but then there are some that's like you.
Well, some of these pretty
that
boys,
beard,
man, like
that's-
Brad Pitt. I mean,
Yeah.
let's face it. It doesn't matter how old he gets. Beard, no beard. But I know. There are some that
Once
better.
or just the way that grows or something. It's just like that doesn't work.
Well, some of them, it kind
yeah.
of, they let it go everywhere. You know what I'm
See, that's
saying?
this. This goes, if I don't keep this short, it grows straight out. It's oh yeah. My hair is the same way. If I don't gel my hair down,
know,
it stands
I know.
straight up, and my facial hair is the same way.
Yeah, I
And
wish
then
I had both of those problems.
it looks more, the longer I let it get, the grayer it looks. It's true.
Oh, that reminds me of something. Elon just sent me a note yesterday about
How great my beard looks?
A hypoallergenic product that he uses. Well, I'm going to say this carefully. It's for either your hair or your beard. In his case, it's for his beard. I ordered it. I mean, Elon usually doesn't steer me wrong. I ordered it. I'll let you know. But you said it kind of burns your face.
Yeah, man.
The product, which I get a little burn from time to time too.
Nobody knows that. You
Yeah, I'm 72 and all my hair is dark now. Yeah, everybody believes that.
No, they don't even want to burn.
But anyway, there's this product.
Paul
that, as
Barry
good as
is-
Alon says.
Paul says he got the In Living Color reference. It was
Okay.
an underrated show. He says underrated show.
One of the funniest ever. Yeah,
Oh, God.
really.
Mark Stolnicker says hi. Alan Garrett who says he appreciates Q&A every single week. You're awesome, Alan. Eric Perez says some kind stuff about the worship team. He's glad Pastor Kim's back. Danny Barber, nobody cares what she says. Roberto Dieter, welcome back, Pastor Kim.
Hey, has she ironed those shirts yet?
Hey Danny, if you're gonna be like laying stuff out in this picture, it's
Yeah,
disgusting.
okay.
Iron them,
Just-
okay? We have 500 volunteers signed up for Christmas Serve.
I know.
That's awesome.
That's crazy.
All right. Plan to join us on Sunday,
Yeah.
9:15, 11:15. The band is back together. Pastor Kim is here, so it'll be awesome. It's going to be a great time. The latest message in the new series, Pastor Randy.
Well, it's not so new series now.
Not
We're in the
anymore.
fifth-
No,
we're
do
in
you
the
remember,
fifth message.
remember
Yeah.
that on a Sunday morning?
Oh, yes.
I'm like, Pastor Randy. Well, it was only like the third week, but in my head, I mean, that's still pretty new. And it's Pastor Randy's
On the downside.
news.
Well, you do have a few things to think about on Sunday morning.
Without you, Pastor Kim, last week, I felt like an auctioneer. It was like lead worship, and then Dylan did a great job with the announcements. But I mentioned the Christmas serve, and we honored our veterans, whom we love. Prayed over the veterans, and then went back. And I was just, by the end, my brain, I had so many plates spinning, they all came crashing down.
Yeah, it's the season of the year where we have so many announcements.
It's great.
We know it's too many, but you just can't help it.
Good
You
stuff.
have to get them in.
Good
great.
stuff.
Yeah.
Join us on Sunday. We'll see
Yeah.
you then. Great things happening.
Bye.
Bye, FCF.